Hey guys, tonight we tumble headfirst into the leafy, swaying world of 19th century exploration, where danger didn't always come from jaguars or quicksand, but from above. That's right, coconuts. Falling, bouncing, rolling coconuts. You find yourself standing on a narrow strip of steamy shoreline, the humidity clinging to your woolen naval coat like a jealous octopus. Overhead, the palm trees arch elegantly until one shifts in the breeze and you hear a soft thump just feet from where your head used to be. This isn't a comedy sketch. You probably wouldn't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're part of a modest British expedition, dispatched to some chart-unfriendly corner of the Indian Ocean. The maps are vague. Your captain has a mustache that screams overconfidence, and the coconuts. Oh, the coconuts! Within the first 10 minutes on shore, a member of the team, let's call him Horace, takes a direct hit from one while adjusting his socks. He collapses dramatically, and while he survives, his faith in palm trees does not. You trudge inland. A little warier than before, boots sinking into soft sand. You think back to that explorer's manual your cousin gave you, the one with a whole paragraph warning about venomous insects, but not a word about projectile fruit. The jungle hums with life, and you realize how deceptively quiet the coconuts fall. No dramatic music, just a dull thud, as though the island itself is sighing in boredom before striking. Historians still argue whether European accounts of coconut-related injuries were exaggerated to dramatize tropical danger. But diaries from the time paint a consistent picture. The things fell a lot, fell hard, and explorers weren't exactly wearing crash helmets. One account from a Dutch naval surgeon in 1846 records a coconut splitting a deckhand's shoulder open as cleanly as a saber. You'd think that kind of thing would be rare. It WAs and single quotes the locals, of course, laugh. They've grown up weaving hammocks under these trees without incident, and they teach their children to spot the dangerous lean of a too heavy palm. But you, wide-eyed and pasty, interpret every falling coconut as a divine omen, perhaps of doom, possibly of a mild concussion. By mid-afternoon, your group sets up a base camp, erecting canvas tents with admirable optimism directly beneath a cluster of palms. You suggest gently that maybe the coconut grove isn't ideal. Your captain insists it's shaded. You mutter something about shaded by menace, but no one hears, or pretends not to. As evening rolls in, the heat gives way to the kind of tropical breeze that feels lovely but sounds like coconut artillery being loaded. You stare upward far too often. One of the locals tells you, with the dry humor only someone who doesn't fear tropical produce can muster, that if the coconut hits you, you were meant to go. There's an odd comfort in that, if not an entirely reassuring one. The sun dips, casting amber light through the fronds. You realize the jungle has gone from postcard pretty to something out of a sleep-deprived fever dream. The cries of unseen birds blend with the rustle of fronds and the occasional thud of doom. Someone lights a lantern. Someone else drops a coconut in the fire pit by mistake. There's a hiss, then a pop that sends two people diving for cover. No one is seriously hurt, but now there's a new rule. Coconuts stay outside the ring of fire. Fun fact: the average mature coconut can weigh 1.5 to 2.5 kilograms and fall from heights of over 25 meters. That gives them enough velocity to match the kinetic energy of a small bowling ball hurled from a second-story window. It's no surprise that explorers of the 19th century, often sleep-deprived and poorly hydrated, began assigning malevolent personalities to them. They were unpredictable. They rolled mysteriously. They struck when no one was watching. Some claimed coconut trees had a sense of timing. A Portuguese captain in 1829 wrote that coconuts never fell while he was looking at them, only the moment. He turned his back. Perhaps he was just unlucky. Or perhaps they really were watching, waiting by nightfall, as you lie in a makeshift hammock strung not under, but between two suspiciously fruitless trees, you begin to understand the paranoia. The sounds of nature settle into your bones, chirping insects, lapping waves, the occasional grunt of a pig far off in the dark. And then, sharp and heavy, a coconut hits the ground not 5 feet from your head. Again, you bury your face into the crook of your arm, wondering if sleep is even an option in a world where produce has impact force. Still, there's a strange serenity to this place. The stars are brighter than you've ever seen, scattered like powdered sugar across the sky. The sea is calm, and the coconuts? For now, they sleep too. You wake up gradually to the smell of damp canvas, salt air, and something faintly nutty. It's still dark, but the jungle is already whispering. Some bird calls are cheerful, others sound like a warning. You shift in your hammock, stretch your arms, and immediately regret not rigging a roof. Dew has settled into every fold of your shirt, and judging by the sticky crunch underfoot, coconuts have been busy while you slept. Horace is up before you, nursing a lump on his shin from a rogue husk that rolled in during the night. He swears. The coconut wasn't there when he lay down. You nod solemnly, as if this is a spiritual revelation. In 19th century exploration, the list of natural threats is long, but this one's got a personality by the time you're spooning a questionable porridge from a dented tin. You're already wary of what the day might bring. And it brings precisely the thing you hope to avoid, another falling coconut, this time during breakfast. It lands in the center of the campfire with a thud that sends embers into a flurry, causing two crewmen to overturn the breakfast pot in their panic. You stare at the coconut. It didn't crack. Of course it didn't. It's invincible. Historians still argue whether coconut-related injuries were disproportionately recorded in journals because they were unusual, or whether explorers were just that consistently unlucky. Some suggest that the coconut's infamy grew over time, passed from ship to ship like a ghost story, each retelling more dramatic than the last. But when you're there, in it, you understand how one single falling fruit can ruin a perfectly fine morning. Here's where it gets mildly scientific. Researchers in more recent times actually measured the potential impact force of a falling coconut. Depending on height and maturity, it can hit with as much as a ton of force per square inch. Think of it as tropical hail scaled up. The phrase, "death by coconut," is not a joke. It's an uncomfortable headline waiting to happen, which brings U.S. to the unfortunate tale of Lieutenant Bartholomew Price, one of the less remembered members of an 1833 expedition to the Andaman Islands. Bartholomew, poor soul, had a tendency to nap against trees. He called them gentlemen's recliners. One afternoon, while dozing with his back against a slender palm, he was struck squarely on the crown by a falling coconut. He survived, but he woke up believing he was a shrimp merchant from Lisbon. The story ends with him trying to barter salted pork for clamshells with a group of mildly concerned locals. Quirky, yes, but also tragic. These things had consequences. Your captain, bless him, is now insisting the crew carry wide-brimmed pith helmets even while resting. For safety, he declares, which makes sense until you realize that a 2-pound coconut falling from 70 feet up doesn't care about felt lining. It will find you. It will bounce. And if you're lucky, it'll just ruin your tea. Of course, there's always someone in the group who thinks they can catch one. There's a bet going around. 5 coins to the man who can snatch a falling coconut before it hits the ground. That man is Jenkins. Jenkins has hands like oars and the reflexes of a sleepy goat. You watch him squint up at the treetops all morning like he's trying to will a coconut to drop. Eventually one does. Jenkins lunges. The coconut wins. It always wins. By midday, paranoia sets in. You notice people setting their stools in random open spaces, carefully inspecting shadows, and offering nervous glances upward before beginning any task. A man spills an entire tin of tobacco because he hears a rustle. It turns out to be a parrot. Still better paranoid than Pancake. The single quotes S also the issue of where to store the coconuts you've harvested. The team quickly learns that stacking them in the corner of the camp creates a tripping hazard of legendary proportions. One cartographer goes flying while carrying a wet map and lands squarely in the latrine trench. The coconut pile survives. His pride does not. You begin to appreciate why coconuts, despite their usefulness, became a source of tension on long journeys. Too hard to crack with bare hands, too heavy to carry in bulk, and just unpredictable enough to inspire full-blown coconut-related safety protocols. A ship's log from 1857 out of Calcutta actually included the note, "Coconut stores must be double-netted and kept away from sleeping quarters, 'cause Wilson's eye." Poor Wilson. One fact that surprises you is how often coconuts were mistakenly blamed for things. One evening, a loud thunk is heard near the waterline. The alarm is raised. Saboteurs, natives, a tiger. Everyone rushes to arms. It's a coconut. Again, just a coconut. You wouldn't think a fruit could be this disruptive. And yet, here we are. There's even an open scholarly debate about how much the coconut mythos shaped perceptions of the tropics for returning explorers. Were they genuinely afraid? Or did the coconut become a kind of shorthanded joke, a metaphor, a symbol for the absurdities of life far from home? You suspect a little of both. You reach for your canteen. The water's warm, but refreshing. A coconut husk floats nearby in the basin, bobbing gently like it's mocking you. You don't even try to move it. That's how they get you. The sun begins its slow descent. Shadows grow longer. A breeze stirs the palms again. Someone's reading aloud from a journal something about freshwater fish migration, and it's oddly comforting. Until another thud interrupts, followed by a chorus of sighs. You smile, faintly. It's almost become a camp ritual. And somewhere, above you, nestled between fronds, a dozen more coconuts wait, heavy and silent. Their time will come. By the third day, you're no longer surprised when coconuts interrupt even the most basic tasks. You simply incorporate them into the rhythm of the expedition like leaky boots or biting insects. It's no longer if one will fall, it's when. And where, and on whom. The morning starts with the usual shuffling of canvas, clanking of tin cups, and one sharp crack as a coconut lands directly on the supply crate labeled "Delicate Instruments." Inside, a brass compass, a box of thin magnifying lenses, and a sextant with dreams of precision. Now all with a lovely new dented patina. This is when your captain begins referring to the coconuts as airborne liabilities. He tries to establish a designated coconut zone, an area where all team members can handle nut-related activities. It's a clearing with no overhead fronds, marked with a hand-painted sign that reads, "Fruit Control Station." You can't decide if this is genius or madness. Probably both. One of the botanists, yes, you brought one, insists on examining the trees more closely. He wants to measure ripeness and estimate fall frequency. He even names the trees. There's Mildred, Spiteful Harold, and Bernard the Unreliable. You're not sure if this helps, but it adds a certain emotional complexity to the experience. He tells you something mildly horrifying over lunch. Coconut palms don't drop fruit because they're angry. They drop them because they have to. A ripe coconut is no longer useful to the tree. It's ejected. abandoned, given the boot. And if you're standing beneath it, well, that's your problem. Historians still argue whether the term widowmaker, used for falling branches in logging camps, was ever applied to coconut trees in serious documentation. But explorer diaries often show a suspicious reverence for palm groves, written with the same hushed tone normally reserved for volcanoes or unpredictable and -laws. As the heat rises and midday draws near. Another concern presents itself: how coconuts behave during storms. You're told, cheerily, that in high winds, coconuts become tropical projectiles. One sailor claims he saw a coconut fly 30 feet sideways during a squall and take out a chicken coop. There was no co-op nearby to verify this, but everyone nods respectfully anyway. You notice how some crew members have developed coconut radar. They pause mid-step if they hear the whisper of leaves above. One man refuses to sleep outside the boat's storage room, having declared palm trees his personal curse. Others start building small lean-to shelters not from rain, but from falling nuts. It's not elegant, but it's effective. Mostly. Meanwhile, the boat's cook is developing a complicated relationship with coconut milk. He calls it the traders. Broth after one batch spoiled overnight and fermented itself into a syrupy disaster. You can still smell it in his beard. Let's talk about one particularly unlucky fellow, Lieutenant Devon, the quartermaster. Devon tries to clear space for a small path using a bamboo pole. He pokes the base of a tree. There's a rustle, a warning sigh from above, and then bam, coconut straight to the hat. His helmet crumples slightly, and he sits down with the quiet expression of a man reconsidering every decision that led him to this island. Later that evening, Devon claims he saw the tree move. Not sway, move horizontally. The botanist gently explains that this is highly unlikely. Devon does not respond. He just sips coconut water with a haunted expression. There's a fringe tidbit. You hear around the fire that night, some explorers believed coconut groves were haunted, not by ghosts, but by island spirits that punished intruders with sudden impacts. You laugh. Then a coconut falls into the stew pot, splashing 3 men. You stop laughing. One of the junior crew members has begun carving tally marks into his canteen for every coconut drop he witnesses. He's on 17. It's only day 3. You suspect he's going to run out of space before week's end. The expedition's cartographer is visibly struggling. She's trying to plot river branches and elevation contours, but every time she sits down, the breeze picks up and a nut hits the sand within her personal space bubble. Eventually, she starts sketching in short bursts, darting glances upward like a hunted bird. Her newest map has a hastily scrawled note in the margin, "Beware Grove of Doom." That night, someone suggests just cutting all the coconuts down. It sounds logical until the botanist gasps like you've suggested burning a library. They're a keystone species, he says, which apparently means they matter more than your forehead. So the coconuts stay. They always stay. Historians still debate how much fear of local flora shaped expedition routes. Some journals contain whole sections detailing alternative paths to avoid groves, even if it meant going twice the distance. Some say these decisions were about safety. Others argue they were psychological. Once the crew was convinced the coconuts were out to get them, no path seemed safe anymore. You fall asleep that night to the sound of a soft thunk somewhere in the distance, followed by a whispered curse and the unmistakable plop of someone stumbling into a cooking pot. The island hums. The palms sway. The coconuts bide their time. The 4th morning begins with a familiar thud. Not dramatic. Not alarming. Just a casual, heavy drop a few feet from your bedroll. At this point, you don't even flinch. You simply roll over, squint upward through the fronds, and mutter a resigned, "Good morning to you too." Breakfast is soggy hardtack with a side of overripe coconut chunks. The cook has embraced the inevitable and now includes coconut in nearly everything. Coconut stew, coconut mash, even a bizarre attempt at coconut porridge, which tastes like tropical wallpaper paste. Still, you eat it. Not because it's good, but because it hasn't fallen on you yet. Mid-morning, the expedition prepares to break camp and move inland. The path will lead you away from the coastal groves and blissfully out of the direct drop zones. Spirits are high. One crew member belts out a shanty titled "No Nuts Today," which becomes the unofficial anthem of the hour. The march is sweaty and uneven, the terrain shifting from soft sand to lumpy jungle floor. You're halfway through a tangle of banana trees when someone yells, "Jenkins again." He's tripped, naturally, but this time not on a root. On a coconut. You look around. There are no coconut palms here, which means this one followed you. Historians still argue whether explorers sometimes imagined coconut threats long after they'd left the groves. One account from 1855 mentions phantom fruit, which crew members claimed rolled behind them like spies. There's no evidence this was real, of course, but paranoia in unfamiliar lands has always been part of the explorer's burden. You reach a clearing that seems promising. No palm trees in sight. Birds chirp, a small stream gurgles nearby, and you all agree this will be the next camp. Just as you begin to unpack, a coconut rolls out of someone's pack. No one knows who packed it. No one admits to carrying it. You all stare at it in silence until the cook, without a word, boots it into the stream like a football. The next several hours are relatively peaceful. With no trees directly overhead, the sense of looming danger fades. You take your time pitching tents, clearing brush, and finally sitting still without scanning the sky every 5 seconds. Someone starts boiling water. Another begins sketching. Wildflowers. A few even nap in the sun. And then comes the cannonball. Not an actual cannonball, of course, but the coconut might as well be one. It flies in at an angle, launched not from a tree, but from the ridge above. You all freeze. A second coconut rolls down behind it. Then a third. You scramble uphill and discover the culprits, monkeys. 3 of them lounging lazily, surrounded by a pile of coconut shells. One looks at you with smug disinterest. Another picks something from its fur. The third flings a husk in your general direction. Welcome to the coconut cannonball effect. Quirky fact. Some 19th century explorers recorded cases of wildlife using fruit as weapons. While debated, certain monkeys, particularly macaques, have been observed throwing objects, sometimes even coordinating throws. Whether it's deliberate aggression or just play gone wild, historians still can't agree. But when a coconut clocks Jenkins in the back for the second time today, you're ready to believe in simian sabotage. You retreat back down the slope, defeated. No one wants to challenge the monkeys for the ridge. One sailor suggests parley. You suspect he's been out in the sun too long. The camp becomes more defensive. Tarps are rigged like shields. Canteens double as helmets. You discover a new form of anxiety, the sideways coconut. You thought gravity was the only threat, but now the landscape itself conspires with fruit to launch sneak attacks. That evening, around the campfire, the captain tries to give a speech. Something about fortitude and bravery. Halfway through, a coconut rolls into the circle and lands at his feet with a gentle tap. He steps back. Nobody moves. The fire crackles. The coconut just sits there, watching. There's a pause. Then Jenkins, forever bold, forever bruised, picks it up and hurls it back into the jungle. You all cheer like children. For a moment, it feels like victory. Later, as you lie in your hammock, you replay the day in your mind. The tripwire fruit. The monkey ambush. The gentle thud of one coconut sliding off a tarp and bouncing softly beside your foot. You wonder, idly, how something so seemingly harmless can dominate your thoughts this way. How a nut technically a drupe, the botanist reminds you, can become both food and foe. You drift off, just as a breeze rustles the trees. A faint thump, then silence. By now, your brain has developed a background coconut alert system. Even in sleep, it keeps a tiny twitching eye open listening, feeling for the shift in breeze that means a nut might be on the move. You dream of coconuts. Not falling, exactly. Just circling. When you wake, the camp is in quiet motion. Someone's rebuilding a tripod from driftwood. Another's attempting to filter water through a sock. And over by the fire pit, a small congregation has gathered around a cracked coconut like it's a religious artifact. Jenkins is giving a dramatic reading of what the interior grooves might symbolize. You smile. You're not even annoyed. It's just what happens now. Breakfast, naturally, is coconut porridge again, only this time with a handful of dried fish flakes stirred in for protein. It tastes like tropical seawater. You eat it anyway. Today's mission is to catalog specimens along a rocky ridge just beyond the monkey sabotage zone. It should be a straightforward hike, no palm groves in sight, no monkeys, no problem. Right? Wrong. Barely 20 minutes into the climb, a crew member, Algernon, known for his heroic sneezes and questionable poetry slips. He lands not on rocks, but on something round and fibrous. Yes, another coconut. In a location no coconut has any earthly business being. Everyone stops. You all look up, then down, then at each other. How? There are no trees here, no monkeys, just wind, dirt, and surprise nuts. Historians still debate whether explorers accidentally spread coconuts by carrying them as souvenirs, gifts, or snacks and then discarding them wherever they stopped. It's one theory behind their suspicious global presence. Another claims they float long distances. Sailors in the 1800s recorded coconuts washing up thousands of miles from the nearest tree, riding currents like tropical spies. You begin to suspect coconuts are less fruit and more force of nature. The botanist, who insists on taking samples even when morale is low, pockets the rogue coconut and calls it a drift anomaly. You call it a trap. Back in camp, the cook has a new challenge: coconuts that won't open. He's already dented one knife and broken the handle on his second-best mallet. You hand him the drift anomaly, and he eyes it like it might explode. He mutters something about droop demons and walks away shaking his head. Here's where things start getting ridiculous. The captain decides to use coconut shells to organize supplies. Not because it's practical, but because it's poetic. Nature's bowl, he calls it. Unfortunately, no one checks for lingering coconut milk, so the next day the spice ration tastes like tropical mold. The cook retires early, face in hands. You've also started noticing the smell. Not bad, exactly. Just omnipresent. A vague combination of sweet rot and sunscreen. Even your journal pages are beginning to curl at the edges from exposure. The camp has become one massive coconut buffet, and none of you are winning. Then there's the odd problem of coconut water fermenting. Some of the nuts, especially the older ones, have begun to fizz when cracked open. Jenkins insists this means they're naturally sparkling. You watch him drink a full cup and then spend the afternoon speaking only in limericks. It's fine. He's happier that way. By evening, the crew begins telling stories. Not about sea monsters or cannibals or haunted caves, but coconuts. The time one bounced off the boat and hit a dolphin. The coconut that rolled into a tent and took a nap. The one that appeared in someone's pack 2 days after they swore they left it behind. Are they true? Who knows? but they're shared with the kind of hushed reverence usually reserved for sacred texts or explosive flatulence. One sailor swears he saw a coconut wink. No one believes him, but no one dismisses him either. It's around this time you start noticing coconut-based injuries appearing in the ship's official medical log. Mostly minor, bruises, stubbed toes, one splintered toenail. But the list is growing. You wonder if, someday, future explorers will read these logs and assume coconuts were some apex predator that hunted in packs. The captain, to his credit, starts recording coconut strikes as coded entries. C3 impact, left flank, D2 ricochet, tent collapse, and so on. It feels absurd. It is absurd, but also kind of comforting. Like you've learned the language of your tropical nemesis. There's a running joke. Now that coconuts are evolving, watching, learning, you laugh. Then a coconut lands on your map. No one speaks. You sigh, fold the map, and mutter, I deserved. That night, the wind picks up. The trees groan slightly, and you hear a few distant thuds, but you're camped well away from danger. For the first time in days, you're confident that no coconut will reach you. Unless, of course, it rolls. The sixth day begins with a quiet that is frankly suspicious. No thuds, no startled yelps, no coconut-related injuries. The jungle air hangs heavy and damp, the sort of air that feels like it's hiding something. You wake up more cautious than usual, even though your feet are sore and your neck's got that special ache reserved for canvas beds on uneven ground. You stretch, pull on your boots still damp, and glance around camp. The coconut count is at 0. For the first time all week, there's no visible fruit debris scattered across the common space. It should be a relief. Instead, it feels like you've been stood up by a stalker. Breakfast is unrecognizable. The cook has run out of inspiration and perhaps also sanity. Today he serves a dish he calls island hash, made of what appears to be boiled tubers, something formerly known as salted pork, and a suspiciously gritty coconut puree. You eat it in silence. It's either that or face Jenkins trying to open another fermented nut with his teeth. The plan for the day is mundane. Inventorying gear, cleaning tools, and sorting water supplies. You think maybe this will be a day free of incident. No coconut ambushes, no botanical betrayals. Just the sweet, uneventful slug of daily maintenance. Wrong again. It starts with a squelch. Not a dramatic one, just a quiet, wet pop underfoot. You look down, a coconut husk, buried slightly in the mud. It's not from your storage pile. It's not from breakfast. It's just there. You look around. Another husk, then another. They're everywhere, half buried, soaked, lurking in the earth like relics from a forgotten civilization. You realize, with a slow, sinking chill, that you built your camp atop a former coconut midden. Historians still argue about the uses of old coconut shells among island communities. Some accounts suggest they were burned for fuel. Others say they were used in construction or even as crude bowls. But one fringe theory, rarely taken seriously, proposes that coconut shells were deliberately buried in shallow pits to mark territory or, bizarrely, to confuse invaders. If that's true, congratulations. You've just camped on a battlefield. You notify the captain. He squints at the husks, scratches his chin, and mutters something about ancestral ambush zones. A joke, probably, maybe. Now you're on edge. Everyone is. You can feel it. The breeze shifts and half the crew glances upward by instinct. Even though there are no trees directly above, the habit is too ingrained to shake. And then thwack. A loud crack echoes from the edge of camp. Jenkins screams. Again, you run over, expecting blood or at least bruises. Instead, you find him kneeling beside a shattered coconut. It didn't fall. An exploded dot turns out if you leave a fully ripened coconut in direct sunlight long enough, the pressure inside can build. Add a few microbial friends and you've got a tropical time bomb. This one decided to detonate mid-morning. No injuries, just terror. Do coconuts know when you're finally relaxed? Jenkins asks, brushing pulp off his shirt. No one answers Dot at this point. The botanist has taken to treating the entire camp like a field study in coconut behavior. He draws a grid of the area, marks all known impact sites, and begins sketching a pattern. You glance at the chart. It looks suspiciously like a face. A smug one. Meanwhile, the cartographer's nerves are fraying. Every attempt to draw new terrain is interrupted by the sound of rolling husks, not falling rolling. Somewhere, just out of view. Every time she starts a line, something bumps her heel or makes a suspicious crunch beneath her stool. Her latest sketch includes the note, "Beware spectral fruit." Later that afternoon, you help retrieve a bundle of equipment stashed near the monkey ridge. The path is clear, the gear is untouched, but the crate is inexplicably heavier than you remember. Inside, 3 extra coconuts. No one brought them. No one packed them. This is the moment you stop asking how and start whispering why. Historians still debate whether tailies of self-replicating coconuts were metaphorical or simply the result of a logistical breakdown. Some explorers, notably the French cartographer Arnaud de Pienne, recorded duplicating fruit syndrome, where items seem to appear in duplicate without explanation. Modern scholars blame poor inventory control. But when you've carried the same crate 3 times and it keeps getting heavier, theory feels irrelevant. By sundown, the cook is given up. Dinner is just straight coconut slices and a half-hearted apology. No seasoning, no presentation, just defeat. You chew in silence. You do not make eye contact with the fruit. A breeze stirs the trees beyond camp. You hear nothing fall. Still, everyone edges slightly inward, sitting closer to the fire, like its flickering light might ward off encroaching droop spirits. And then, the final insult of the day. You open your pack to retrieve your journal and find a coconut inside, fresh, whole, cold. Somehow no one put it there. You stare at it for a long time, then gently zip the bag shut again. Whatever it wants, it can wait until morning. You wake with a start not from a noise, but from the absence of one. No thuds, no rustles, no muttered curses about bruised limbs or coconut stew, just the still too silent breath of dawn. And that, of course, is terrifying. You sit up slowly. In your hammock, feeling the sweat already beginning to collect on your temples. The jungle isn't dead quiet. It hums and clicks, as jungles do, but it's missing something. The faint percussion of coconuts has stopped. There are no scattered shells, no husks underfoot, no fresh fruit menacing from the tree line. Jenkins walks by carrying 2 coconuts like he's cradling his newborn twins. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. Everyone's waiting for the other shoe or nut to drop. Today is inventory day. You gather at the supply crates with your grim-faced captain, who insists on a coconut count before even touching the food stores. 3 crates should have held rations, rope, and replacement socks. One of them is now somehow entirely full of coconuts. The quartermaster, pale as flour, insists he didn't put them there. You sigh and grab your clipboard. Coconut count: 86, usable. 9, suspicious. 77. It's unclear what qualifies as suspicious, but Jenkins has drawn little skulls next to them on the chart, and no one is arguing. You spend most of the morning repacking supplies, transferring anything edible not coconut flavored to sealed jars, and trying not to trip over the endless shell debris underfoot. The cook has started chucking husks into the jungle with unhinged enthusiasm. You hear him mutter something about banishing demons under his breath. Then comes the argument. Debate breaks out over how coconuts should be classified in the expedition ledger. Are they food, tools, weapons? Some suggest hazards. The botanist wants to classify them under organic variables, which somehow feels too polite. This leads to the great coconut ration debate. Here's the problem. The water stores are low. Again, several canteens have begun to taste faintly of mildew, and the purification tablets are dwindling. That leaves coconut water. Now, coconut water is technically drinkable, hydrating even, but only if it's fresh. The moment it starts to turn, it becomes a syrupy, fizzy mess of regret. The issue? No one trusts the coconuts anymore. Even the ones freshly cracked emit an unsettling hiss. When even burped, historians still debate how heavily expeditions in the 19th century relied on coconuts for hydration. Some journals speak highly of their usefulness, especially on atolls with no fresh springs. Others, like the Notes of Dutch Captain Peter van Loom, refer to coconut water as jungle mischief juice, particularly after one crew fell ill with what he described as fermented madness. The captain calls a vote. Do we drink the coconuts? The vote is a tie. The cook abstains on spiritual grounds. Eventually, a compromise is reached. Jenkins will test each coconut. He is, somehow, still enthusiastic about the job. They speak to me, he says, as he shakes one close to his ear. 3 coconuts in, he's invented a scoring system. This one, he says, tapping it reverently, is a 7 out of 10, fruity nose with a hint of menace. You drink it anyway. And surprisingly, it's fine. The success emboldens the crew. Soon, there's a semi-official tasting area set up under a tarp labeled Coconut Control. The botanist starts writing down flavor profiles. Someone digs out the smallest spoons available to do proper sampling. It becomes, briefly, a tropical tea ceremony. The crew laughs. Spirits lift. Until Jenkins cracks open a coconut that's black on the inside. No one drinks that one. They bury it. With honors. You retire early, exhausted from managing a fruit-based constitutional crisis. In your journal, you write, Day 7. Coca politics escalating. Morale unstable. Jenkins may be ascending. As the sun sets, you sit by the stream away from the camp, where the air feels a little less thick with fibrous tension. The jungle is still, the breeze warm, and there's a moment, brief but golden, where you actually feel at peace. Then you hear a soft plop. You turn. A coconut floats gently down the stream, past your feet, bumping once against a stone, as if to say, still here. You stare at it. It bobs once, twice. Then drifts out of sight. You return to camp without saying a word. By day 8, the expedition no longer refers to them as coconuts. Now they're units. Hazardous units. Suspicious units. Friendly units in rare cases. You've even heard Jenkins refer to the cook's latest dish as unit stew, which, frankly, feels like a threat in soup form. You begin your morning dodging a coconut tied to a tent rope like a booby trap. Who set it? Unknown. Why? Also unknown. But it swings with alarming precision, catching one unfortunate sailor in the ribs. He stumbles back, curses softly, and marks a tally on his arm with charcoal. That's 4 for him. He's not even the record dash holder. The goal for the day is cartography. The terrain beyond your current location remains unmapped, and the captain insists on progress. So you set out with your team, climbing ridges, taking measurements, and really trying to focus on the topography, and not the fact that the jungle path is lined with more husks than leaves. Halfway through the survey, the cartographer Eliza, already fraying, lets out a strangled cry. You rush over, expecting snakes or quicksand. But no, her entire satchel of paper has been soaked. Coconut water. You don't even ask how it got there. She's trembling. Her compass is slippery. The topographical notes are now gently coconut-scented. PAPYRUS. She sits down and draws an X through the area with a stick. Cursed, she mutters. Just cursed. Historians still argue whether coconuts were ever deliberately used as sabotage tools. Some accounts suggest rival expeditions left booby-trapped paths or baited shelters with overloaded palms, counting on falling fruit to slow down the competition. While these tales remain in the realm of campfire lore, your group is starting to take the idea very seriously. Jenkins proposes a theory. What if they're not falling? What if they're jumping? You don't respond. Not because you disagree, but because you don't. The team returns to camp by midday, sweaty, scratched, and spiritually drained. The only map produced today contains 3 mountain contours, a sketch of a bird, and the word coconut scrawled in giant looping letters across the entire lower quadrant. The captain reviews it in silence, then gently folds it shut and says, "We'll try again tomorrow." Back at camp, the coconut shells are piling up, literally. There's now a heap behind the cook station that's taller than Jenkins. The crew has started calling it the mound. Some swear it shifts at night. The botanist wants to burn it. The captain says no, he fears we might summon something. You spend the afternoon doing inventory again. Of the 86 coconuts from yesterday, 7 have vanished. The cook didn't use them. The crew didn't eat them, and no one admits to discarding them. You're starting to think about that stream. How? Many have drifted off? Where are they going? That night, around the fire, the stories begin again. One sailor tells of a coconut that appeared in his boots. Inside the boots, another insists he woke up to find a cracked one beside his pillow. Number. Sound, no mess, just resting there. Like it had been watching him sleep. Someone else claims they heard a husk whisper. You try to laugh, but it's a nervous kind of laugh. The kind that's followed by glances over shoulders. For your part, you've started dreaming in coconut logic. Strange symbols, rotating husks. A voice that sounds like the cook's, but deeper, reciting recipes that never end. You wake up sweating, your journal open to a page filled with the word fiber, written 17 times in a row. It's time for a distraction. So the crew holds a contest. Coconut Olympics. Events include longest throw, fastest husk peeling, and something Jenkins calls extreme rolling. You watch a coconut careen down a slope, hit a tent pole, and ricochet into someone's tea. Everyone cheers. It helps. For a while, you take your shift on night, watch under the stars. The jungle is quiet, save for the occasional snap of twigs and the low rustle of palm leaves far in the distance. You rest your hand on your satchel. Inside, compass, journal, dried meat. And now, a coconut. You didn't put it there. You take it out, set it gently on the ground, and whisper, "Enough." A breeze lifts. The fire pops. And somewhere you hear the softest little plunk. Not close. Not threatening. Just a reminder. They're never far. The morning of day 9 begins with something truly unexpected laughter. Not the quiet chuckle of someone avoiding despair, or Jenkins muttering limericks under his breath. No, this is genuine. From the gut, someone just lost their mind kind of laughter. You rush out of your tent, boots half-laced, to find Eliza the cartographer standing in the center of camp, doubled over, her face red, tears streaking her cheeks. She's holding a coconut above her head like it's a trophy. It's inside the latrine pit, she howls, pointing. It's floating like it owns the place. Indeed, one of the latrines has been sabotaged coconutted, you suppose with a perfectly ripe fruit bobbing calmly where no coconut should ever be. The crew gathers around, groaning and gagging in equal measure. Someone mutters, "Unholy baptism." Another recommends a cleansing ritual. You quietly update your journal. Coconut behavior evolving. Now targeting morale directly. Over breakfast, coconut gruel, of course, the captain calls a meeting. "We've reached a point," he says gravely, "where we must accept that coconuts are no longer incidental. They are part of this expedition, perhaps even leading it." He's joking, probably, but no one's entirely sure. Today's goal is repairing damage. Tents torn by weather, tools dulled from use, boots cracked from slogging through wet underbrush. You spend hours scraping hardened coconut pulp from a compass lens, muttering under your breath. Jenkins is fashioning a spoon from a shell. The botanist is trying to extract oil with a rock and a sense of purpose. Then come the monkeys. Yes, them. Again, the camp's outer perimeter is breached sometime after noon. A trio of macaques slips through the brush, takes a brief inventory of your setup, and then performs what can only be described as a coordinated coconut theft. One distracts Jenkins with a somersault. Another claps rhythmically. The third makes off with 2 coconuts tucked under its arms like a harried grocer. Historians still argue whether certain primates on tropical islands developed specialized techniques for interacting with humans. Some call it mimicry, others call it opportunism. But one 1842 explorer's diary includes a line you now relate to deeply. "They come for your food. Yes, but also your sanity. You chase the monkeys halfway to the creek before losing them in the foliage." One looks back, coconut in hand, and seems to wink. You tell yourself it's a trick of the light. You tell yourself many things. When you return to camp, the cook is standing beside the mound, now nearly shoulder high. "I saw it shift," he says. You choose not to engage. Instead, you help reorganize the coconut rations. You've begun categorizing them based on behavior. Docile, cracks clean, water fresh, pulp soft anxious, emits hiss on opening, smells sharp aggressive, rolls unpredictably, appears in new places unprompted possessed, black interior, no. Explanation, whispering optional. The crew treats these categories seriously. They've even begun attaching tiny color-coded strips of fabric to each one. Jenkins wears a red ribbon in solidarity with the aggressive group. Around mid-afternoon, someone suggests trying to craft tools from coconut husk fibers. You spend half an hour weaving something that might be a rope or might be an insult to maritime craftsmanship. It holds, barely. One sailor manages to tie a hammock. It collapses instantly, to no one's surprise but his own. Still, it sparks an idea. A few industrious crewmates begin creating what could charitably be called coconut armor. Pauldrons, chest plates, even a helmet shaped like a giant nut bowl. The effect is intimidating? No, let's say memorable. The botanist lectures you gently. You know, in the South Pacific, coconut fiber was used in real armor woven into thick layers, sometimes even reinforced with fish bones. You nod politely as a crewman clomps past wearing coconut knee, guards, and a wild-eyed grin. You hope the next expedition's uniform budget is robust. That evening, dinner is unusually lively. There is singing. Someone tells a joke involving a parrot, a sailor, and an overly ripe coconut that makes absolutely no sense, but it still gets laughs. You think, maybe, this is a turning point. Then Jenkins walks in carrying a coconut with initials carved into it. "Found it floating by the creek," he says, holding it up. "Pretty sure this is my handwriting." He didn't carve it. He's certain he didn't carve it. The laughter fades. You stare at the nut in silence. Everyone frozen. Finally, the cook reaches out, takes it gently, and sets it beside the fire. "No. One touch this one," he says. "It knows things." You nod. And you believe him. Day 10 begins with the sound of Jenkins chanting, not loudly. not urgently. Just a low, steady rhythm, half-hummed and half-mumbled, as he paces a circle around the mound. He's wearing his coconut helmet and has painted his cheeks with ash from the fire. No one stops him. You blink blearily from your hammock, unsure whether to be concerned or, honestly, impressed. Breakfast, by some miracle, does not include coconut. The cook has found wild yams and made a mash that tastes like boiled. Optimism. It's a welcome change, though the slight absence of coconut leaves everyone a little twitchy. You're used to it now, its flavor, its presence, its unpredictable physics. It's become part of your biology. After breakfast, you and Eliza set off to survey the Eastern Grove, one of the last remaining stretches of uncharted terrain nearby. The path is overgrown, the air thick and green, but the groves themselves are strangely peaceful. Almost too peaceful. You walk in silence until you both see it at the same time. A clearing. Dozens, maybe hundreds of coconuts, perfectly arranged in rings. Some are stacked into pyramids. Others are aligned in spirals. No human did this. Eliza freezes. Jenkins? Jenkins is back at camp, you whisper. Neither of you moves for a moment. You stare at the eerie arrangement, half expecting them to start rolling toward you like ancient druidic bowling balls. Do we mark it? Eliza asks. You nod. She sketches quickly, her hand shaking. On the map, she labels the clearing simply, "Do not disturb." Historians still debate whether coconut formations in the wild are natural, caused by tides, erosion, and animal movement, or whether they reflect something intentional. A few obscure anthropological papers from the 19th century suggest some island cultures attributed spiritual significance to coconut rings, calling them the circle of return. Whether that referred to reincarnation, migration, or the way coconuts never stop showing up isn't clear. You and Eliza don't discuss it further. You retreat slowly, quietly, respectfully. Back at camp, Jenkins is now teaching two crew members how to commune with the nuts. They sit cross-legged around the mound, eyes closed, each holding a coconut as if it were a warm loaf of bread. You step around them with great care. It's not worth the conversation. The botanist approaches, face alight with excitement. "I've discovered something," he announces. "Coconut trees are more productive under stress." You blink. Stress? Yes, environmental pressure can trigger higher fruit output. So hypothetically, if a grove perceives threat or change it, could, well, drop more coconuts. You stare at him. So you're saying, "We're being pelted because the trees are anxious." Possibly, he beams. Isn't that fascinating? You nod very slowly and excuse yourself. The rest of the day passes without major incident. You repair ropes, write notes in your journal. Today's entry begins with "the trees are nervous," and help Eliza shade in new contours on the map. Spirits are cautiously high. No one's been struck, cracked, or frightened by a rogue nut in over 6 hours. That's a new record. Until, just after sundown, someone screams. It's not a panic scream. More of a "why is this happening again?" sort of scream. You rush to the mess area. The coconut stew pot, abandoned, clean dry now, contains 6 fresh coconuts. No one saw who placed them. No one heard anyone approach. They're and stacked neatly too. Pointed ends all, facing up. Which is somehow worse. You don't touch them. Instead, the captain makes a decree. We will no longer engage with unexplained coconut appearances. They are to be respected, logged, and left alone. Everyone agrees. Loudly. You all return to the fire, shaken but united. There's comfort in the fire's crackle, in the quiet clink of tin cups, in the sound of Jenkins gently whispering to a coconut he's named Marlowe. Sleep comes uneasily. The jungle presses in like a held breath. The wind is gentle, but the trees sway with intent. You lie on your side, watching shadows play against the canvas of your tent, and you wonder, were they always this present? Or have you just become aware? Just before you drift off, you hear it again. The soft bump of a coconut landing nearby. Not hard, not sudden, just there. Waiting. Morning on day 11 arrives not with a sunrise, but with the dull, metallic clatter of someone tripping over a coconut bucket. You know it's Jenkins before you open your eyes. His voice somewhere between theatrical apology and spiritual lamentation floats across camp. Another sacred vessel disturbed, he says. Forgive me, Marlowe. You sit up, rub your eyes. Wonder briefly if you've slept inside a fruit stand by mistake. Your boots are where you left them, but now one of them contains a perfectly symmetrical coconut husk. Clean, empty, almost gift-wrapped. You don't question it. Not anymore. Breakfast is blessedly coconut-free, just weak broth and something. That might have once been jerky. The cook has taken a vow of no-nut cooking until the spirits settle. The crew thanks him as if he just cured scurvy. Today's assignment: reorganizing the equipment tent, which has started to resemble a fibrous flea market. Tools have vanished. Others are sticky. Your compass now smells like sunscreen and regret. As you sort crates and check gear, you stumble across something odd. An entire box labeled Botanical Samples AG is now filled with coconuts. You turn to the botanist. I didn't put those there, he says, too quickly. You sure? I think I would know. You stare at him. I mean, probably. This becomes the day's theme: coconut infiltration. One of the sextances, wedged in a husk. A telescope lens smells unmistakably like sweet milk. Someone opens their canteen and finds it filled with shredded pulp. You stop asking how. You just log the data. Jenkins begins referring to it as the integration. Historians still debate whether explorers during the 1800s genuinely believed nature had a sense of humor, or whether they simply reached a mental state where laughter was all that remained. A French naturalist once wrote, "In the jungle, even the vines seem to mock you." You feel this deeply now, especially the vines. Especially the nuts. Eliza approaches around midday with a blank stare. She holds up her latest map. There are no mountains, no rivers. Just dozens of coconut-shaped symbols scattered across the page like some ancient warning. She sets it down carefully, then walks away. You let her go. Later, the captain gathers the team and makes a bold proposal. He wants to designate a neutral zone. A place in camp where no coconuts are allowed, no eating, storing, discussing, or drawing them. Think of it as a demilitarized zone, he says. So you all spend an hour clearing and roping off a small patch of earth, surrounding it with bright cloth flags and a sign that reads "No nuts" beyond this point. You feel a little silly, but there's also something soothing about having a space, however imaginary, where you might feel normal again. The botanist warns that coconut exclusion might unbalance the grove. You thank him and continue hammering in the stakes. That night, the cook prepares a stew with absolutely no coconut. You all cheer. It tastes like sadness and boiled socks, but it is gloriously, defiantly nut-free. You sit around the fire, tired, but briefly victorious. Jenkins begins reading aloud from the expedition journal, not the real one, but the coconut-only ledger he's been compiling in secret. It's titled The Nut Chronicles, Volume 1. The entries are alarming. Day 3. I witnessed a coconut blink. Day 6. The mound grew by 4 while no one was looking. Day 9. Marlowe whispered a warning. I ignored it. Regret followed. You all laugh. But it's the kind of laugh that makes your spine itch. As the stars blink into view, the jungle seems unusually quiet, not peaceful, just still. You stretch, yawn, and walk to the edge of the clearing to relieve yourself. And there it is, right at the boundary of the neutral zone. A single coconut, perfectly centered. Not rolling, not cracked, just placed. You stare at it. You don't touch it. You don't speak. You return to your hammock in silence, and Jenkins, still cross-legged by the fire, looks up at you and nods. They're testing the treaty. He whispers. You say nothing. You close your eyes, and you dream of rings again. Day 12 begins with a surprising gift. Silence. No crashes. No Marlowe. No Jenkins reciting fruit-related scripture before breakfast. Just the hiss of dew drying in the rising sun and the low murmur of the jungle stretching its arms. Open your eyes slowly, suspicious of the peace. Nothing in your boots. No coconuts on your chest. Your hammock is not rocking from unseen impacts. For the first time in nearly 2 weeks, it feels like a normal morning. To normal. Breakfast is yam cakes with dried herbs, edible, satisfying, and completely coconut-free. The crew eats cautiously, exchanging looks like children who've been promised no more surprises. Even Jenkins seems subdued, twirling a husk between his palms but saying nothing. It's almost like everyone silently agreed to not speak of them today. So you dive into the day's task, clearing brush near the creek to improve drainage. It's honest work, sweaty, mundane, filled with blisters and thorn scratches. You welcome it. You sweat through your shirt by mid-morning and scrape your arms on jagged bark, but you don't mind. For once, you're working with land and plants and not things that fall from the sky or whisper from within. Then it happens. You trip. It's not the roots, not the moss, not even your own laces. It's a husk. Buried. Again. But this one's different. It's soft, too soft. You brush dirt aside and reveal a pile of disintegrated coconut shells, not fresh, not brown, but white and papery, like they've been rotting here for decades. You call the botanist over. He crouches beside the husks and makes a quiet, reverent noise. This species, he murmurs, isn't native to this island. You both stare at the pile. 40 or 50 shells, some fossilized, others reduced to lacework. You can't tell how old they are, but they weren't left by your expedition. Pre-colonial? You ask. He shrugs. Possibly. Historians still argue about the spread of the coconut across the globe. Some say the nuts floated naturally from island to island, carried by ocean currents and guided only by chance. Others claim early Polynesians and later, Southeast Asian traders deliberately planted coconut groves as waypoints, leaving behind botanical breadcrumbs that later explorers would interpret as natural. You begin to wonder, what if this clearing, long before you arrived, was someone else's camp? What if someone else had the same problem? You dig further. More shells, a rusted button, a fragment of bone. You back away, heart thudding not from fear, but recognition. You've seen enough journals, read enough accounts. You know the look of abandoned campsites when you see one. But this one seems off. Back at your own camp, the others are busy, some patching canvas, others refitting rope hammocks. Jenkins is muttering again, but softly, almost soothingly. He's brushing the mound with a flat piece of wood, shaping its edges. Like a sandcastle sculptor, you pull the captain aside and explain what you found. His face hardens. We're not the first then, he says. Looks that way. He doesn't say anything else. But that night, he sleeps in his boots. As dusk settles, Eliza adds the husk pit to the map with a red X and no label. We don't name what we don't understand, she mutters. After dinner yam stew, again you sit by the fire with the crew. Someone plays a quiet rhythm on a tin cup. The jungle hums its sleepy tune, and that's when the stories start. Not coconut tailies. Not this time. The older sailor Tomas, quiet, gray-bearded, usually uninvolved, leans forward and says, "You know, my grandfather told me something once. Said there are places the jungle keeps things moving. Not alive, not quite dead. Just waiting. You wait for someone to laugh. No one does." He nods toward the pile of shells near the cook station. "We think they're fruit, but what if they're leftovers?" You consider it. Everyone does. That night, just before sleep, you hear a rustle by your tent. You sit up slowly, reach for your lamp. But when you step outside, nothing, no monkey. No sailor, just a single coconut, resting at the edge of the neutral zone. It's shell faintly carved with a spiral, perfectly symmetrical. Clean, like it had always been there. You don't move it. You just stare, then turn around, and zip the tent closed. You wake up to the clang of metal striking coconut. The cook, having reached what must be the spiritual edge of sanity, is furiously trying to split one open with a soup ladle. It's not working. The coconut sits there, mocking him, each strike. Bending the ladle a little more, you lie back down. Let him have this moment. When you eventually rise, it's clear the mood has shifted again. Not panic, not humor, just a dull, unspoken fatigue. The kind that settles behind the eyes and makes every task feel heavier than it is. Even Jenkins is quiet this morning, sitting beside the mound with his coconut marlow on his lap, eyes closed. Lips barely moving. You can't tell if he's praying or just whispering for company. Breakfast is yam hash again, no coconuts in sight. The crew eats in silence, not because the food is bad, just because it feels like everyone's run out of words. Today's mission is gear inspection, especially the surveying instruments, sextants, compasses, magnifying tools. You and Eliza lay them out on a clean cloth. Begin checking for rust, misalignment, and the increasingly frequent problem of coconut pulp residue in odd places. Halfway through cleaning, Eliza gasps. She lifts a brass monocular from its case. It's completely jam-plugged with something pale, fibrous. A rolled husk inside the lens. You both stare. How? She begins. You shake your head. There's no how anymore. There's only when. You disassemble it carefully, piece by piece, placing each polished part on a separate cloth. But the residue is everywhere, not sticky, not fresh, old, dry, as if it had been there before the tool even left the ship. You look to the logbooks next. The pages have warped, slightly swollen, the way paper gets when exposed to moisture. Coconut. Water? Possibly. Jenkins suggests the books are absorbing knowledge. You politely decline to unpack that theory. Then, the incident happens. One of the newer crew members, Percy, bright-eyed, still calling this a grand adventure, slips in the equipment tent, trips over a coiled rope.
Lands hard on a husk, only...
This one isn't from today. It's ancient, crumbly, dark, lighter than it should be. The kind of dry that smells like time itself. Inside it, a rusted coin, a Spanish one, 17th century. Everyone crowds around. The botanist takes it reverently, holds it to the light. No mistake. It's old. Too old. This island was never part of any known Spanish route. Historians still argue whether early explorers reached certain Pacific islands far earlier than officially documented. Unconfirmed landings, storm-diverted vessels, unofficial trading outposts. But even the fringe historians never claimed this far, this deep inland. You look at the husk again, and you feel it. The same feeling you got at the husk pit 2 days ago. Not discovery. Not even curiosity. Recognition. The rest of the day passes in quiet tension. The crew breaks into small groups. Some polish tools. Others remeasure inventory. Jenkins creates a chart on bark showing coconut migration patterns. It's entirely fictional but strangely convincing. The neutral zone now has a second sign. Do not question the arrangement. You're not sure who added it, but no one removes it. Dinner is creative. The cook, running out of starches, experiments with river greens and root broth. The result is bitter but coconut-free. It's considered a victory. Later, the fire burns. Lo, the night hangs heavy with the scent of damp leaves and anxiety. Thomas tells a story again, this time about an island he once visited where fruit never fell. Not once. Locals said it was because the trees had already chosen. You ask what that means. He just shrugs. They didn't say, but no one walked under them. The jungle responds with a soft gust of wind, stirring the palm fronds just enough to remind you they're still there, watching. Waiting. You settle into your hammock. Close your eyes and dream of maps drawn not on paper, but on husk, curved lines. Spiral roads. Names you've never heard but somehow understand. You wake hours later, breath shallow. Your hand is resting on a coconut beside your bedroll. You didn't put it there. You don't scream. You don't even flinch. You simply sit up, gently move the coconut off your hand, and set it down beside your hammock like it's a house guest who overstayed its welcome. You look at it. Perfect shell. Still cool from the night air. No markings. No cracks. Just there. The rest of the camp is asleep, save for the fire's low glow and Jenkins, who's muttering in his sleep. You rise, stretch, and walk to the edge of camp. Your boots squish slightly in the dew, and each step feels accompanied not by footsteps, but by the suggestion of being observed. You don't see eyes, but you feel them. The neutral zone is dimly lit now, the moon casting its silver glow across the makeshift boundary. There's no sign of the earlier coconut, the one from last night with the spiral. Either someone removed it or something else did. You return to your hammock. Try to sleep. You don't dot at breakfast. No one mentions the night. Not yours. Not theirs. It's as though a collective agreement has formed. Speak of it too clearly, and it becomes real. You eat roasted yam skins and sip weak tea. The cook doesn't offer a word. Then, the strangest thing yet. The captain calls an assembly. He stands at the center of camp, hair more disheveled than usual, holding what looks like a crude idol, an upright coconut, affixed with pebbles for eyes, dried vines wrapped like a sash. He sets it on a wooden crate. This, he begins, is a test. You all stare. A decoy. A stand-in. If the coconuts are watching us, perhaps they can be distracted. It's absurd, bold, desperate, and also exactly the kind of idea that makes total sense on day 14. Jenkins volunteers to build a shrine. By mid-morning, you've created a strange altar, a ring of husks, the central idol raised on a tripod of walking sticks, a necklace of shell beads looped around its midsection. No one's joking. No one's rolling their eyes. You all want to believe this might work. Historians still argue whether explorers created spiritual systems to cope with isolation, tropical illness, or the sheer absurdity of unfamiliar lands. Some anthropologists believe coconut worship, however jokingly, it emerged in multiple cultures independently, possibly as a form of botanical animism. Today you add one more to the list. The shrine is placed at the edge of the neutral zone. Someone leaves a spoonful of stew as an offering. Someone else adds a feather. You contribute a matchbook. Jenkins chants something in a made-up language. He insists it's ancient. By noon, spirits have lifted. No falling nuts. No surprise. Husks. Even Eliza is sketching again. Trees this time. Not spirals. You breathe easier, until the cook vanishes. He was seen heading to the creek. Said something about soaking roots. Then nothing. No sounds. No signs. Just gone. You organize a search party immediately. Torches, machetes, compass bearings. The jungle feels different now, denser, like the trees are standing closer together on purpose. You follow the narrow trail he usually takes, marked faintly by a flattened path and the occasional broken leaf. 20 minutes in, you spot something. His spoon, bent and embedded in the trunk of a palm. No blood. No prints, just the spoon. Then, the coconuts. Dozens of them at the base of a ridge, arranged in a perfect semicircle as if watching the trees. The center is clear, and sitting there, at the focal point, is the cook's satchel. You step forward. No sounds. No birds. No monkeys. You retrieve the SATCHEL. Inside, a piece of paper. On it, one word. Listen. You don't understand. Not really. But it sends a chill through you in a way 1,000 falling coconuts never did. You call off the search after 2 hours. The trail ends cold. The ridge is silent. The shrine back at camp remains untouched, the idol unmolested. But the cook is simply gone. That night dinner is skipped. No one feels like eating. Jenkins stands by the fire, holding a coconut like a baby, whispering a lullaby. Eliza updates the map. She draws a rough X at the site and writes, "Loss." The captain retires early. You don't. You sit up, sharpening a stick for no particular reason. And when you finally lay down, exhausted and hollow, you find something under your bedroll. Not a coconut. Just the ladle. Bent. Cold. But clean. The morning of day 15 tastes like iron, not from blood, but from tension, raw, metallic, and clinging to the tongue like the aftermath of biting your cheek. No one speaks during breakfast. No one even chews loudly. The cook's absence hangs in the air like smoke. Jenkins leads a brief cleansing circle around the mound, carrying a coconut carved into what he insists is a ceremonial mask. He wears it on his chest like armor. He now refers to himself as interpreter of the outer husk. You nod politely and keep moving. The captain calls a meeting, voice low, eyes harder than usual. Effective immediately, he says. No one leaves. Camp alone. There are murmurs of agreement, no arguments, no questions. Just tired heads nodding in unison. Everyone is afraid, but no one wants to say it out loud. We've lost one. You spend the morning reinforcing tents, rechecking supply stores, and clearing the brush around the neutral zone. It's overgrown again. How? You cleared it 3 days ago, but the vines return always. That's when the crates are discovered. 3 of them lined up neatly outside the gear tent. You're certain they weren't there yesterday. They're heavy, marked only with a simple painted symbol. A spiral, roughly brushed in white ash. Inside, coconuts? Of course, but these aren't normal. They're dry, almost mummified. Not cracked, not opened, just ancient. Lighter than they should be, like the water inside has long since vanished. Eliza calls them hollow watchers. Jenkins bows to them. The captain refuses to speak at all. You don't record them in the log. Not yet. Around midday, you take inventory in the medical kit. Bandages, tinctures, thread. All in place, but the box labeled painkillers now contains only coconut. Shavings, neatly pressed, tied with twine. You laugh, just once. It escapes you before you can stop it. Jenkins looks over, nods like you've achieved something. 2 have reached acceptance, he says. You walk away. By mid-afternoon, the air is thick with heat. The palm fronds are motionless, like they're holding their breath. The jungle is silent. Even the monkeys are gone. Then comes the messenger. A boy barely older than a cabin hand approaches. The captain with wide eyes and a pale face. He found something in the stream, just where the water pools into a quiet basin below camp. You all follow. And there, Resting in the shallow water is the cook's hat. Inside it, a single coconut. No note, no tracks, just the soft burble of water. And that quiet floating shape. The captain wades in, retrieves both. The hat is clean, the coconut is warm. He says nothing. Back at camp, the idol from the shrine has been moved. It now sits outside Eliza's tent, facing inward. She didn't move it. No one did. You return it to the shrine silently, but 10 minutes later, it's back. That night, you try to sleep, but the jungle is louder now, not with sound but with presence. The rustle of leaves no longer sounds like wind. The hush of fronds no longer feels like random motion. You feel surrounded, observed, not by animals, not by anything you can name. By coconuts. You wake to find 3 lined up outside. Your tent flap, spaced evenly, a line. You remove them. You throw them far into the jungle. And in the morning, 4 return. By day 16, the line between coconut-related incident and coconut-related reality is gone. There are now official roles in camp tied to the phenomenon. Jenkins has become the keeper of the mound, a title he wears like a crown. Thomas, the grizzled sailor, is now called the Watcher of the Rings. Ever since someone found him tracing the circular coconut patterns in the dirt by moonlight, whispering, "They mean something, I just know it." Even the captain has adopted a new tone. No more barking orders. No more clipped, rational summaries. Now he speaks softly, like he's in a chapel. Or a negotiation. You don't remember when you stopped laughing. You do remember when the coconuts started moving between tents during the night. One moment they're stacked behind the latrine. The next they're beside the fire pit, arranged in perfect rows like tiny soldiers reporting for duty. This morning, you wake to find one inside your coat sleeve. You've stopped reacting. Plan for the day, if you can still call it that, is to recover the rest of the food crates from a grove to the west, near what you now call the spiral clearing. No one wants to go. The captain doesn't ask for volunteers. He simply names names. You're one of them. The path is familiar, but feels longer. The jungle breathes around you, warm and watchful. The grove, when you arrive, looks different. The trees haven't moved, but the feeling has. It's heavier. The light here is dimmer, as if the sun itself has decided not to interfere. The crates are still there, stacked, intact. But one has been opened. Inside, coconuts. Just coconuts. That's all you ever find now. You pack up the others quickly. No one speaks. Not even Jenkins, who has taken to holding a hollowed shell like a compass. He says it points toward energies. You don't ask for clarification, then you hear it. A crack, not a footstep. Not a branch, a coconut falling. From a tree with no fruit. You all freeze. The coconut lands with a soft thud. Rolls twice. Stops at your foot. It's warm. You back away slowly, eyes locked on the thing like it might blink. No one touches it. No one dares. You return to camp in silence, pulling the crates behind you like sleds of burden. When you arrive, the neutral zone is gone. The signs are missing. The rope boundary has been neatly coiled and stacked. In its place, a ring of coconuts, each with a small mark carved into the shell. Eliza kneels beside one, tracing the symbol. "It's a map," she whispers. "I think it's a map." You all stare. There's no dissent. Jenkins begins copying the symbols into his bark journal. You notice he's stopped using ink. He's writing in coconut milk with a stick. The captain calls a halt to all exploration. From now on, he says, we observe. We don't interfere. Thomas builds a second shrine beside the first. This one uses 3 coconuts, balanced vertically. He says they represent the past, the present, and the soon-to-be. Again, no one questions him. That night, the fire crackles low. You sit wrapped in your coat, watching the trees sway. Across the clearing, one of the husk piles shifts. Not wind. Not animal. Just shifts. Something is underneath it. You don't move. You just watch. It shifts again. Then stops. The captain walks over slowly, plants a lantern in the ground nearby. He doesn't say a word. Just looks at you and nods. We see it now. His silence. Says. Later, while writing in your journal, you find a message scrawled between your previous entries, words you don't remember writing. They were here before we named them. You look around. Nothing. But you know better than to believe you're alone. You set the journal down, pick up the nearest coconut, and whisper, "We're listening." By day 17, no one in camp bothers with formal greetings. Instead, the day begins with inventory of the overnight changes. Each morning brings something new. Altered formations, fresh coconuts in unusual places, symbols traced in the sand. And today, most unsettling of all, a long thin trail of husks forming a path away from camp. Not just scattered, but placed, like breadcrumbs for a traveler with very specific dietary needs. The captain orders no one to follow it. So, of course, Jenkins follows it. You find him 2 hours later sitting at the base of a giant palm tree, cross-legged, surrounded by what can only be described as arranged offerings. Coconut shells, shards of bark, a single weathered shoe. He's perfectly calm. "They wanted me to see it," he says, smiling faintly. "They showed me where they sleep. You don't ask what they are. You help him up, and together you follow the husk trail back, although by now half the pieces have vanished. Collected? Reabsorbed? No one knows. Back at camp, the botanist is waiting. He's been up all night running stress tests on coconuts, bouncing them, freezing them, boiling them, even burying one with a piece of quartz. The results are inconclusive, but the conclusion he offers anyway is chilling. They react. When watched, he whispers, you blink. They what? I left one in the clearing, in full sun. Nothing. But when I turned my back for 20 minutes, it moved. Just a few inches. But it moved. You nod slowly, because this sounds completely mad, but no more so than anything else these past 2 weeks. Historians still argue whether 19th century accounts of intelligent plant behavior were misinterpretations of natural growth patterns, or just the effects of sunstroke and tropical madness. But you're beginning to believe something the journals never said aloud: the explorers weren't hallucinating. They were adapting. You spend the rest of the day helping Eliza try to decode the symbols on the coconuts from the neutral zone, what's now been nicknamed the Parliament. It's a ring of 12, each coconut marked differently, none repeated. They seem to correspond to places around camp, tents, trees, the old fire pit, even the mound. I think it's spatial, she murmurs, like a top-down view. Or a voting system. Voting? Don't coconuts fall when they're ready? She says, what if that's a decision? You don't respond. You don't need to. That night, Tomas finds something beside the latrine. A circle of smooth stones. Inside it, one cracked coconut split perfectly in half. Inside the two halves, water. Fresh. Cool. Crystal clear. No one touches it. But no one removes it either. Jenkins sits beside it for hours. I think this one's an apology. He says dinner is meager. The food stores are nearly gone now. What's left is root mash, dried fish, and preserved yam skins. But no one feels hunger. You all eat because it seems like the polite thing to do. Then, just as the stars rise, a sound echoes across the jungle. Knock. 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 Not wind. Not thunder. Deliberate. From the east. You all stop. Someone counts. 3. Knocks. A pause. Then 5. Another pause. Then 1. You record it. Eliza sketches it. Tomas, pale and trembling, mutters, "They're learning to talk." That night, you don't sleep. You lie in your hammock, staring at the roof of your tent, heart pounding slowly. Something brushes the canvas. Not sharp, not insistent. Just a tap. And when morning comes, a coconut sits at the base of your bedroll, marked with a single symbol, a spiral, with an eye in the center, watching. You don't scream. Again, day 18 is no longer about what is happening, but what it wants. The coconut with the spiral eye stays exactly where it appeared, resting at the foot of your bedroll like an offering or a warning. You don't touch it. You don't move it. You just step carefully over it as you begin your morning routine, trying very hard to pretend that you're still living in a rational world where fruit doesn't make eye contact. The others are quiet. Jenkins has painted white ash spirals on his cheeks and now refers to them as communication portals. Tomas doesn't speak anymore. He just sharpens sticks and arranges husks in concentric circles by the WATERLINE. Eliza presents a new theory. She's been mapping the knock patterns, yes, the ones that started echoing nightly, and believes they correspond to numbers. 3, 5, 1, she tells the captain, tapping the page. Prime numbers, a sequence, a message. The captain somehow doesn't laugh. Instead, he calls for a full halt on all human-driven rituals. No more offerings, no more husk art, no more shrines. We stop feeding this, he says flatly. No more engagement. We watch. That's it. No one argues. But no one cheers, either. That afternoon, you're assigned patrol duty around the perimeter. You walk slow, careful steps through familiar paths that no longer feel yours. The jungle is too quiet again. Even the vines seem to hang lower than before, heavier, more. Observant. Then, in the underbrush, you see a not a coconut this time. Structure. Rough, primitive, but intentional. A hut, assembled from palm leaves, vine rope, and what looks like pressed husk fiber. Inside, nothing, no objects, no markings. But in the very center of the hut, pressed into the dirt floor, a shallow spiral. You call for Eliza. She arrives breathless, stares, then immediately begins sketching. The captain, when he sees it, only nods. "Leave it be," he says. No tents within 20 meters. You return to camp in a fog and find Jenkins constructing a second mound. Not an addition. A mirror, on the opposite side of camp, perfectly symmetrical. He doesn't explain. He doesn't have to. Later, the botanist finds 3 coconuts buried upright near his tent, precisely spaced, like posts. He tries to remove one. It resists. Not physically, psychologically. You see it in his eyes. He lifts it an inch, then puts it back down. "I don't think they like that," he mutters, wiping sweat from his brow. That evening, the sky turns a strange amber before dusk. The jungle hums louder than usual, low, insectal, and constant. The knocks return. This time, 2, 4, 6, a new sequence. Even Jenkins doesn't speak. He just writes it down and underlines it twice. Dinner is skipped. No one feels well. Around the fire, the captain reads aloud from an old sea journal something to remind you all that life once made sense. But even his voice sounds different now. Hollow, like the coconuts are listening. Judging syntax. When you return to your tent, the spiral-eye coconut is gone. In its place, a map, drawn in ash and pulp, directly onto the side of your canvas tent. It shows the camp. The river. The hut, and beyond that, a place no one's charted yet. A small hollow, marked with 3 rings and a dot at the center. You stare at it for a long time, and in that moment, you know. Tomorrow you'll have to go there. Not because anyone told you, but because you've been invited. You rise before the sun, not because you're eager, but because the map, drawn in pulp on your tent wall, didn't fade overnight. In fact, it looks clearer, like it settled into the canvas, like it was always meant to be there. The dot at the center pulses in your mind like a heartbeat. You don't tell the captain. You don't wake Jenkins. You just pack a satchel, water flask, journal, 2 lanterns, a machete, and 1 coconut. Not for defense, not for ritual. You just bring it. Because somehow it feels wrong not to. You leave camp in silence, the trees parting before you like an old friend with a secret. The trail is unfamiliar, even though the map was precise. The jungle here is softer, quieter. Not in the way of silence, but acceptance. The birds don't warn you. The leaves don't snag you. You are expected. And then you find it. A clearing ringed with palms. Perfectly circular. At the center, a shallow pit outlined in white stone. Inside it, nothing but ash. And husks. Hundreds of them. Neatly arranged, concentric, like a fossilized spiral galaxy of fruit. You don't step into the circle. You kneel at its edge. The coconut in your pack shifts. You take it out. Place it gently at the nearest stone. It stays upright. You feel still. This isn't danger. Not yet. It's something older, wiser, patient. Historians still debate whether early explorers encountered phenomena they could not explain and chose, instead, to record them as superstition. A journal from 1807 describes an inland altar of the Nut people in the South Pacific, dismissed later as a translation error. Another entry from an East India Company navigator mentions silent circles with fruit watching from the edge. You always thought those were metaphors. You don't anymore. The pit begins to hum, not loudly, just under your ribs, like a tuning fork held against the soul. You breathe deeply, and your ears ring with a faint rhythmic knock. 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 3, 5. 1. It's inside you now. You rise slowly and back away. The coconut stays behind. As you return through the jungle, the path you walked is gone. In its place, a new one, lined with shells, leading home. Back at camp, everyone is waiting. Jenkins is sitting, eyes closed, beside both mounds, now connected by a perfect archway of husk and vine. Eliza meets your eyes, holds up the journal. They changed it again, she whispers. Last night's map. It moved. You check the canvas wall of your tent. The dot has gone. In its place, a new marquee, a simple human shape drawn in ash. You don't speak. You just nod. That night, you don't sleep. None of you do. The entire crew sits by the fire, not out of duty, but instinct. The knocks begin again, not from far away, but from inside. Camp. 1. 1. Everyone hears it. No one moves. Then, a voice. Or something like 1. Not words, just presence. And then, from the edge of the firelight, the cook returns, or something that looks like him. He doesn't speak. He's barefoot, carrying a coconut. He sets it beside the fire, bows his head once, and walks into the dark. The coconut splits on its own. Inside, nothing but water. You don't ask what it means. You already know. They've accepted your offering. Tomorrow, they speak. Dawn arrives slow and golden, pressing through the canopy in soft beams that touch everything but the center of camp. There, beneath the arch of husk and vine, the shadows remain. Still. Patient. You rise and drink from your flask, throat dry. No one speaks. Even Jenkins, usually humming or chanting to the fruit in his arms, sits completely still. Eliza scribbles notes by instinct now, her eyes never leaving the circle of fire-blackened earth where the cook's coconut split last night. The captain steps forward, slowly, deliberately. He places a coconut at the center of camp. No shrine. No joke. Just a quiet gesture. We're ready, he says. And then the waiting begins. The jungle watches. The palms sway in rhythm, though the air is still. You sit cross-legged with the rest of the crew. No weapons. No tools. Just open hands and open questions. The coconut at the center begins to tremble. Gently at first, like a pot about to boil. Then harder. It doesn't roll, doesn't bounce, it just shivers. As if shaking off centuries of sleep. Jenkins leans forward, eyes wide, whispering, "They're choosing." And then a sound, not a knock, not a fall, but a layered voice. Not human, not language. Just vibration, moving through the bones of your body, tickling behind the eyes. It isn't heard so much as known. And somehow, you understand it. We have seen. We have waited. Now we speak. Eliza clutches your arm. "It's them," she says. "It's all of them. The mound, the spiral, the coconuts. They were never just tools. Never just fruit. They were records. They were messages. They were eyes." The vibrations continue. You walk upon forgotten ground. You repeat what was once known. You must decide what comes again. You glance at the captain. He nods barely. He's listening too. The spiral isn't just a shape. It's a question. The jungle around you pulses with quiet understanding. You suddenly see it all: the maps, the symbols, the hut, the knock patterns, pieces of a cycle. Not a curse. Not madness. A test. The voice returns, deeper now. Those before you answered wrong. They took, they mocked. They forgot to listen. You remember the ancient husks, the fossilized spirals, the untouched shrine. You feel shame without knowing why. And then the final question vibrates through you. Will you remember? Will you speak for us when we fall again? The wind lifts. One by one, the coconuts around the camp begin to fall, not with violence, but grace. They land softly, evenly, perfectly spaced. A circle. You step forward. You kneel. You place your hand on the last fallen coconut. "I remember," you whisper, and with that, the air stills. The jungle sighs. The coconuts fall no more. The sun dips behind the canopy, and the clearing glows in amber twilight. You sit quietly, feeling the warmth of the ground seep into your bones, the hum of ancient memory fading slowly from your skin. Around you, the others are still. No one speaks. No one needs to. The coconuts lie where they landed, peaceful now, inert. Just fruit again. At least for now. Jenkins gently collects Marlowe and places him, for the first time, into the mound. He pats the husks like they're blankets and whispers, "Thank you." You don't laugh. You feel it too. The jungle, once looming and curious, now feels like an old friend waving goodbye from behind the trees. The wind carries no voices. Only calm. You find your hammock. Slide into it like slipping into a warm memory. The canvas creaks gently under your weight, and the sky above is streaked with stars that blink sleepily between the branches. Your satchel rests by your side, the journal inside closed. The map has vanished. It doesn't matter. The message is written. Somewhere deeper now. You breathe. In. Out. A coconut lands, softly, beside your hammock. A farewell. Not watching. Just resting. Just like you. Now, let your eyes grow heavy. Let the jungle fade. Let the night hold you gently, like the husk of a quiet world once misunderstood. Now forgiven. The journey is over. The fruit has fallen. You are safe. Sleep well.